should members of the public get involved in these crossings? Are they good Samaritans, or are they doing something that really is wrong? Well, joining me now is Steve Valdez-Symonds, Refugee and Asylum Rights Director at Amnesty International. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Tell me, you saw that footage a moment ago, I hope. Do you think Channel Rescue are doing the right thing in guiding these vessels onto Kent beaches?
Well, I see no particular concern about members of the public assisting people to avoid rocks or their boat overturning if that's necessary. I don't know particularly about Channel Rescue, and one thing I certainly would agree is that if anybody sees people in difficulty at sea, the sensible and appropriate thing to do would be to contact the RNLI, who obviously not only have responsibilities for rescue at sea, but have expertise in carrying that out.
Yeah, and we don't know, and that's the question I'm asking. And by the way, I did ask Channel Rescue to come on this programme. I did send them an invitation and some questions, and we haven't had a response yet. But if they want to come on, they will be very, very welcome to do so. But isn't the fact that behind all of this are some pretty deeply unpleasant criminal gangs? There's big money involved. And in some ways, if we've got organised members of the British public in touch with migrants crossing the Channel, I mean, you can see why some might say that it's actually aiding and helping the traffickers.
Well, I don't see that, quite frankly. I mean, that boat, presumably, if it had been the journey set up by smugglers or traffickers, well, probably not traffickers, because they would be controlling the people on their arrival to abuse them here too. But if it had been controlled by smugglers, then they've long since lost their interest. They've received their funds. They've set people on their journeys. So I don't see it as assisting the smugglers at all.
Now, tell me, we've got 8,000 people so far that have crossed the Channel illegally. I'm saying it could be well in excess of 20,000 this year. I mean, from an Amnesty position, of course, I understand that you do represent and stand up for genuine refugee rights. How many of the people coming into the UK from France, in your opinion, would genuinely qualify as refugees?
Well, let's start with the Home Office's opinion, because they determine claims, and then, as you know, that there are independent appeals against refusals. It's quite clear that over the last few years, the success rates have been well above 50% and indeed are rising. And now somewhere approaching 2/3 of claims are made by people who prove their claims. I'd also add, of course, that the people who make these particular journeys, the ones that you see on the TV with crossing by boat, who are a small minority of the people still who make asylum claims, which, by the way, are still falling, those people have disproportionately high success rates because of the countries from which they come.
Yeah, and yet they've come from a safe country in the shape of France. You see, I keep reading, Steve, I keep hearing reports about poor, desperate people. I mean, just have a quick look at this man that landed on a Kent beach with a crowd yesterday. I mean, he looks like he's won the lottery. He doesn't actually look like somebody... I've seen pictures of people coming, for example, from Uganda in the 70s, who were humble and very grateful to the United Kingdom for letting them come here and live their lives. I mean, what does that image say to you?
Well, it speaks to someone who has an enormous amount of relief at having made what is a dangerous crossing successfully. And let's not make the direct comparisons that you just made with Ugandan refugees. Very important what the UK eventually, albeit under extreme amount of pressure at that time, did. It then provided routes to this country for people to take. That man hasn't been provided with any safe route at all. And indeed, I wonder at, and Amnesty, as you know, has well documented the journeys that many of the people that we see on our television have made, all the way from their countries of origin, often experiencing torture and abuse on the way, and no, not receiving safety in France at all. So if he is feeling a great deal of jubilation at finally arriving here, I can certainly empathise with that.
Well, he knows he's not going to be sent back anywhere. He knows he's going to be looked after. I mean, I can understand why he feels very happy. But I put it to you that the vast majority of these men, and it is overwhelmingly, as you know, men, and particularly young men that are coming, I put it to you that actually these are economic migrants, not genuine refugees.
Well, the data just doesn't bear that out. And if you bother to look at the data, you will see that the great majority of these people show that their claims are successful, that they are refugees. And so what it means is that we are compelling people to take dangerous journeys rather than providing safe routes for them. Yes, it's disruptive and it would be better if it didn't happen. Yes, it's dangerous and everyone would like to avoid that. And yes, of course, it's exploited by highly unscrupulous and ruthless people. And we should all want to deter that. But none of that is what is happening. And so people are driven to make these dangerous journeys because that's all that's left to them.
So what should we do? Just finally, Steve, should we have an offshore processing centre? Would that make more sense?
No, it would be extremely expensive, as the Australian policy has shown. Vast amounts of money processing only a tiny proportion of the people who seek asylum in that country and doing enormous cruelty to them. We should be opening up real and serious routes to seeking asylum in this country, including from northern France, particularly by those people who have family and connections here.
It sounds like a lot of people would come under that plan.
Well, a significant number of people might come under that plan, but the fact remains that this country receives very, very few refugees, including under its resettlement routes. France at the moment is hosting something around 4 times the number of people who have fled persecution and has an asylum system with nearly 4 times the number of people in it. We cannot keep going with that sort of disproportionality. Of course, it leaves some people, like perhaps the man whom you showed in the picture, destitute and excluded because they cannot get into safe systems.
OK, Steve, thank you very much indeed. Well, that was the view from Amnesty International. Don't say that on GB News you don't get both sides of the argument.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.